So I'm going to start with some Tehillim. I want to start with some Psalms. You have a little thing of Psalms there, chapter 20 of Tehillim. If you're watching us at home, you can take out a Tehillim, or you can just say it along together with us. We'll just do one chapter, and we'll have in mind all of the Jews in Israel that need our blessings, all the hostages, all the soldiers of Tzahal, all the wounded that are in the hospitals, everyone that needs blessings and health and to deal with the struggles should be blessed. Please join me. I'll say it slowly, word by word. If you're watching, say along. Lam Natseach Mizmor LeDavid Ya'ancha Adonai Yom Tzara Yisagevcha Shem Elohei Yaakov Yishlach Ezrecha Mikodesh Umitzion Yisadeka Yiskar Kol Minchosacha Ve'olascha Yidashna Sela Yiten Lecha Kilvavecha V'chol Atzascha Yimalei Niranina Yeshuasecha Uveshem Eloheinu Nidgol Yimalei Adonai Kol Mishalosecha Ata Yadaiti Ki Hoshia Adonai Mishicho Ya'anehu Mishmei Kacho Big Varos Yesha Yimino Ele Barechev Ve'ele Asusim Va'anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir Hema Karu V'Nafalu Va'anachnu Kamnu V'Nis Odad Adonai Hoshia Hamelech Ya'anenu B'Yom Kareinu. Okay, thank you very much. With your only blessings and good news. Thank you everyone that's watching us. Good evening, Susan. Good evening, AG. Okay, tonight's class is always in the memory of Yitzchak ben Yosef. And tonight's class is also in the memory of the 1400 holy Kedoshim, the martyrs whose Shloshim is today. I mean, the sun's already set outside, but today is the Shloshim. When you walked into the shul in the lobby, you saw there's approximately 28 or 30 pictures. Can't show there's a watching, but on the table, last time we had a very beautiful event, which ended up being a beautiful Shloshim ceremony as well. Thank God. And on all the tables, we had centerpieces instead of, I don't know, some flowers or whatever it was, pictures of some of the people that were murdered with a little short, 2-paragraph bio, just a little bit about them to give a little context, their name, where they were, how old they were, etc. So if you didn't look at it before you came in, you can look afterwards. There's a whole, took all those centerpieces, put them out there so you can go look at them. It's only some, it's a little bit. But the challenge of mass tragedies, as is famously known, is that the numbers become a statistic. I was very focused. I was trying to figure out the program and how we're going to make it meaningful. Yesterday's event was being able to try and find stories as opposed to just, talking about the tragedy of the Jewish people and the Holocaust happening again, which is all true. But in some ways you lose that emotional connection and sense of connection. That's a good question. I'm not. Or continue? Okay, so good evening, Faith. Good evening, Shira. Good evening, Joseph. I don't claim anyone that tells you they know what they don't know. No. We're all in this together. Okay, so my friend, let us begin. I want to tell you though in advance what we're going to do now tonight, and it's going to be slightly different. Normally, every single week that we have this Monday night class, what's the objective? Correct. The ultimate objective of every Monday night class is to find the me in the Bible and to find something for us to take away from the person we're discussing. Tonight, first of all, we're not going to discuss a person, we're going to discuss a place, which is this week's Torah reading. Chevron, I'll get there. But tonight will not be a lesson for us. Tonight will be a tribute to the 1400 Kedoshim. And I found something truly beautiful from the Zohar that talks about the cave of Zohar and a bit, how what we're going to learn tonight and this Kabbalistic perspective on the cave of Machpelah, the double cave, as it's called in English, the double cave, how this double cave from a Kabbalistic perspective is actually a tremendous insight into life in general, and specifically those that are no longer with us in this world, that are in heaven, and how they got to where they are. Okay? So that's the where I plan, hopefully, to go tonight. But let's start from the beginning. The beginning is the beginning of this week's Torah reading, the beginning of the parsha of Chaye Sarah, where the Torah tells us that Sarah passes away. Right? Sarah is the wife of Abraham. You all know who she is. We had a beautiful class on her last year, 2 years ago, I remember. Anyway, she passes away. How did she pass away? Before we go down, how did she pass away? And Rob will forgive me for repeating something I said this morning, but to make it fair, I found an answer to the question you asked me this morning in my research for tonight's class. So that you'll hear tomorrow. Anyway, how did Sarah pass away? She heard, or she saw, she was told. It says that the angel, the Satan, tried to stop Abraham and tried to stop Yitzchak from going to the Akedah. The Satan came to the binding of Isaac. The Satan came to Yitzchak and said, "You fool, you know where your father's taking you?" He said, "Yes, I don't care. I trust my father. That's what God said to do. I accept with a whole heart." The Satan tried to convince Abraham not to slaughter his son. He listened. Finally came to Sarah, told Sarah what was going on. She actually asked the giants, who in Chevron, Sheshai, Achiman, and Talmai, to tell her what's going on. They looked and they said, "We see your son bound up and Avram standing over him. An old man is standing over him." She heard that. She screamed out 6 times. And from there, that's why we blow the shofar 6 times. 6 shofar blasts, and her soul escaped from her body. Her soul left her body. Remember, they're going to get back to that later tonight, God willing. So her soul escapes from her body, and she dies. Avram comes back from having the miracle happen. His son Yitzchak's life is saved. And sadly, Sarah has passed away, and he begins to mourn the loss of Sarah. After that, let's read this inside. Text number, chapter 23, verse number 2. And Sarah died in Kiryas Arba. Kiryas Arba is the name of a place. A Kirya in Hebrew means a village. A village. A Kirya is a village. Arba means 4. Kiryat Arba, the village of 4. We'll go there soon. Which is Chevron, in the land of Canaan. And Avram came to eulogize Sarah and to bewail her, to mourn for her passing. Now, why is it called Kiryat Arba if it's really Chevron? So Rashi tells us that the words Kiryat Arba literally means a city of 4. And the reason why it's called that is because of the 4 giants who lived there. Achiman, Sheshai, Talmai, and their father. Okay, so you have 4 giants living in this town, hence the town is called the town of 4 giants, Kiryat Arba. However, then Rashi tells us another explanation why this town is called Kiryat Arba, because of the 4 couples, that will be buried there. Who are the 4 couples? Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. Now, I have to tell you, obviously, that the people living in Chevron at that time, who nicknamed the area Kiryat Arba, did not know that one day there'd be 4 couples buried there. They didn't know that. In fact, they didn't even know that Adam and Eve were buried there. I'll tell you in a second how Avram knew, but they didn't know that Adam and Eve were buried there. If Ephron, the previous owner of this land, of this cave, would know that there was this unbelievable treasure that Adam and Eve are buried in his territory, he never would have sold it to Avram. Never. He had no idea who was there. But it's interesting that everything, the people living there thought we call the city because there's 4 giants living here. But really, on the deeper level, it was called that name because one day there would be 4 couples buried there. The four giant couples too, 4 spiritual giant couples. But the point is that they're both true. You understand? They're both true. And
who is that father?
what?
Who is that father?
Whose father?
Johnny's father.
4 giants.
Doesn't say their name. So I don't know their name. It doesn't say their name. The giant father. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's only one giant. I saw that.
I don't know the name because it doesn't say the name. It just says. Theoretically, we can look it up and see if it says it in one of the commentaries in the Medrash. Obviously, the Medrash doesn't say it, but I don't know. Anyway, it's not so important. I only even read it because I find it fascinating that we often, let me just spend 1 minute on why I find this fascinating. we often think that we understand the reality, and we think something is a certain way, and we can explain why it is that way. And although what we're saying is true, it's only true from one level of reality. Just like it's true that on one level of reality, Chevron was called Kiryat Arba because there were 4 giants living there. That was a true statement. But on a deeper level of reality, on a deeper level of truth, coming from the truth of Torah that knows the future, where past, present, future coexists in a seamless integration, well, guess what? So it's called the Kiryat Arba, the village of 4, because of the 4 couples, the 4 sets of couples that we buried in that place. There were spiritual giants, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, anyway, so how did Avram know that this was a special cave? Before I go further and tell you how he wanted to buy the land, how do we know that? How did Avraham know that this cave that we're going to talk about in a minute is where Adam and Eve are buried?
Because he was going to cook.
Excellent, very good, very good. So the Medrash shares the following story that I'm going to share with you now. The Medrash tells us that immediately following the bris of Avram, and I checked some details that I said this morning, I wasn't sure. I found the Medrash, I looked it up. So immediately after the bris of Abraham, remember the 3rd day he's sitting outside of his tent waiting for visitors to come. Finally 3 visitors come, and it says in the Torah that Avram ran to go get cattle. That's what the verse says, right? He ran. And why do you have to run? He had a pen of sheep or cattle, whatever. You know what I'm saying? You have to start chasing them around like with a rodeo. So the Suda, wee-hoo, yee-haw, like, let me go catch the cattle. He had them when they were young cattle. They were young cattle. They weren't even cows, by the way. They were calves, right? They were young little calves. So why is he running? So the Medrash says he was running because all of a sudden one of the calves ran away. He chased after this calf, and the calf took him all the way into a cave. And Avram comes into this cave and he sees a tremendous light is shining. At that moment, he smelled the fragrance of Gan Eden, and he saw the beds of Adam and Eve that were buried over there. He saw their burial. I don't know if he literally saw them on the bed, but he saw the burial spot. But he saw from the light, he understood that this is the cave in which is buried Adam and Chava. And more than that, from the light emanating from the cave, he understood that this is the entrance to Gan Eden. Adam and Eve were buried by the entrance to Gan Eden, and this is the opening to Gan Eden was right over here, and you could feel that from this light emanating. And so Avram kept this. At that moment, Avram knew that this is where he wanted to be buried, next to Adam and Eve, in the opening of Gan Eden. And this is why this site of Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the cave we're going to read about in a minute, is considered one of the holiest places in the entire universe. It is a place of tremendous holiness. You feel it. When you go to Ma'arat HaMachpelah, you feel that holiness in a tremendous way. I don't want to compare it to anywhere else in Israel and say anything on record, but it's holier than many of the other holy places. It is literally an opening to Gan Eden, and we know that when people are in the time of need, the Zohar tells us that when the world, so we read it in the minor lesson, when we go to the Ohel, etc., we pray, we read the Zohar, it says that when the world is in a time of need, the rabbis will go to Chevron, to the cave of Machpelah, to the cave where our forefathers and our matriarchs are buried, and there we will pray to the forefathers, not to them, we pray in front of them, say, please, seek mercy. And it says that the tzaddikim who are buried there, they rise up from their slumber, and they come and they stand before the throne of God's glory, and they beseech for mercy on behalf of their people. So by going to the grave of a tzaddik, you wake up the tzaddik, whatever that spiritually means. We wake them up, we bring them up, and they come and they stand on our behalf as lawyers, standing before the throne of God's glory. And that's why whenever Jews have been in the time of distress and the time of need, we've gone to the grave of the forefathers, the graves of holy tzaddikim, the graves of the Rebbe, etc. And we go over there. People go to their graves of the Rebbeim all over. People travel to many kvarim of tzaddikim, many graves, because this wakes up the spirits of the holy people buried there to come and pray before God. We learned this from Chevron. In fact, the Torah tells us this. When the spies were coming into the land of Israel, the spies had a very, very negative idea, evil plan to stop the Jews from entering the land of Israel and losing the divine protection of the clouds of glory and the bread from heaven and the well of Miriam. They were quite happy living in the desert. And so the plan of the spies was to say negative things about the land, that the Jews would stay in the desert. Yeshua didn't succumb to their evil scheme because Moshe had blessed him. Moshe had prayed for him. Moshe changed his name. But Chevron was, so to say, defenseless. The Torah tells us that Chevron, Kalev ben Yefuneh, he came to Chevron by himself. And he came to pray. It's in the Torah. In the Parsha of Shlach, he came to pray by the grave of the forefathers. Rashi tells us that was the merit that gave him the spiritual strength to be able to overcome the evil plan of the spies was his prayers at Chevron. So, and from then till today, whenever Jews have been in the time of need, we've gone to pray at the graves of Chevron, to pray at our forefathers, to pray, to beseech, to ask for mercy. And we know that our prayers wake them up to pray before God. So I'm utilizing this class. I'm saying that with the mindset, with the declared intention that even though we're not physically standing in Chevron, we're not physically standing at Arta Machpelah, but our learning about the cave of Machpelah and the holiness of this cave, and what we're going to learn later tonight, should be as if we're standing there. In spiritual matters, physical space is inconsequential. So we can spiritually, where your heart wants to be, that's where you are. Since my heart, and by extension all of our hearts, wants to be in Israel, I want right now to be standing in Chevron praying for our brothers and sisters in Gaza to be returned, for our soldiers to be safe, for miracles to take place, everyone to be healthy. And our learning is going to be a spiritual wake-up to the forefathers and the matriarchs to pray on their behalf for their redemption. Okay?
So you said it's the entrance to Gan Eden. Was that where Gan Eden was?
No, not the physical. The physical place where Gan Eden was, the whole discussion, we talked about it once, if Gan Eden is still part of this physical world or not, but God put the kruvim. He put angels with revolving swords, 2 kruvim with a lahat cherev amishapeches, with a fiery, rotating sword of fire. So, with the entrance, it means that there was a spirit of Gan Eden there, and he smelled, the Medrash says he smelled the fragrance of Gan Eden. He saw the light. He understood this was a place of holiness, and that's where he wanted to be buried. Okay, I'm going to tell you more about Chevron soon, but let's go back to reading the story, what exactly happens. So Avram, they tell him he's mourning his wife Sarah. And then he realized, I got to make a funeral, right? So Avram arose from before his bed. He spoke to the sons of Ches, or here's Heath, I don't know, Heth, in Hebrew Ches, saying, Ger betoshav anachi imachem. I am a stranger and an inhabitant with you. It's an interesting expression, right? I'm a stranger and an inhabitant. So Rashi explains, Rav says to them, I'm going to give you a choice. If you want to act like a foreigner, like a stranger, and I'll pay retail. I'll pay full value in order to get the rights to bury my dead, to take ownership of a piece of land that I can bury my dead there, and I'll act like I have no rights besides what I buy. If you don't want to sell it to me, then I'm going to act like a resident, like I live here, and I'm going to use my legal rights. I've been promised by God to inherit this land, to take over this land by legal right, and take it by legally, not by paying for it. So I'll give you that choice. I want a burial property with you. I may bury my dead from before me. You'll notice he says here my dead in singular. Later he changes. But Ya'anu b'nei Ches Avram le'malei, and the sons of Ches answer Avram. They say to him, listen to us, my Lord. You are a prince of God in our midst. The respect they have for Avram is tremendous. Here's one of the examples that when a Jew walks with pride, a Jew walks with courage and dignity, and they're not afraid to be different, they're not afraid to stand proud on what they believe in, the world respects them. Lot, just to get sidetracked for 1 second, but when Lot, we talked about him in the sermon last Shabbat and last week, he became a judge amongst the people of Stone. He became very assimilated, very integrated to the society of Stone. And yet when push comes to shove, they say to him, look who's a foreigner that came to judge us and tell us what to do. They call him a foreigner, even though he thought he had assimilated. And Abraham, who never, ever, ever once tried to assimilate, tried to be like the people of the nation where he lived. He never once tried to be like them. He always said, I'm different than you. The word Avram HaIvri is called the Ivri. The source of the word Hebrews is from the word Ivri. He's called Ivri because he was from the other side of the river. They all lived there. He was from Mesopotamia, from Iraq, which is the other side of the river. But Ivri, let me finish my point. So Ivri means the other side. He was willing to stand different and separated and unlike everybody else. And he had no problem saying, you could be you, but I'm different than you. I'm a Jew. I believe in one God. I'm different. And when Avram says, I'm different than you, how do the people treat him? The Si Elohim Ata B'Secheinu. They say to him, you are a prince. We go back to the text. You are a prince amongst us. You're a prince. We honor you. We respect you. We recognize your divine dignity. Therefore, they say to him here, it's verse number 6, you are a prince of God in our midst. In the choicest of our graves, bury your dead. None of us will withhold his grave from you to bury your dead. Okay? Yes. Now.
So it was Hebrew or Israeli first?
Hebrew before Israel. Okay? So here we have the story. Avram, they say, whatever you want, Avram, it's yours. It's yours. So I'm not going to read all the verses. There's a whole dialogue back and forth. So Avram says, if that's the case, please, I want to buy the land from Ephron, the Chiti. Immediately that very, very day, they elevated him to a position of importance. They didn't want Avram to have to negotiate with a regular commoner. And Avram was so important and so dignified in their eyes that they make him into the most important dignitary they have. And Avram comes to him and says, I want to bury my dead over here. Let me go back to the text. This verse is an important verse to appreciate what we're talking about. So here's what Avram says to Ephron. Verse number 9. He says to them to ask Ephron. Ask him that he may give me Ma'arat hamachpela ashelo. Those are the Hebrew words. Ma'arat in Hebrew means a cave. That's what the word ma'arat is, a cave. Machpela means double. So he should give me the double cave, which belongs to him, which is at the end of his field. For a full price, let him give it to me in your midst for burial property. There's a number of issues with this verse. Let's go slowly. First, he's asking for a cave, which is called the double cave. Why is it called the double cave? So why is it called double cave? So Rashi gives two explanations why it's called the double cave. The first explanation that Rashi gives us is that it was a cave, seemingly, that had two floors to it. And he gives an example like a house or a structure that has an upper story on top of it. So you actually have, so to the cave had two levels or two caves, and that's what's called a double cave. Okay? The second explanation is that it was so called because it was doubled with couples. It was doubled. There was 4 sets of doubles in there. Adam and his wife Chava. Abraham and his wife Sarah. Yitzchak and his wife Rivka. Yaakov and his wife Leah. So it's 4 doubles. She's buried near Shechem. She's buried on the side of the road by Beit Lechem. She's buried somewhere else. Okay. So here we have 2 explanations of why it's called a doubled cave. Now, I have to clarify that when we go to Chevron today, how many of you here have been to Ma'arat HaMachpelah? Only like four or five of you. Okay. So majority of this room has not been there. Okay. You weren't there? You were. You were there, Sidel. You were there. Okay, but many of you have not been there. Or maybe I'm sure many of you have seen pictures of it. The rest of you haven't been there yet, need to go. It's one of the most beautiful, special, holy places of Israel. But when you go to Ma'arat HaMachpelah today, it really looks like there's 2 caves one on top of the other, but that is not what was when Avram bought the cave. So it's important to give some clarification, a little bit of historical context. So let me give a little bit of, I see it online. So Dana was there a year ago, and it's beautiful. If you've been to Chevron, post online. Chevron is a special place. It's a very special place. There's a lot of security there. There's a lot of friction there because Chevron, you have I don't know, like 2,000 Jews maybe. I don't know the exact numbers. Surrounded by 100,000 Arab neighbors that would love to kill them all if they could. It's not a good neighborhood. It's an amazing neighborhood, but it's not a good neighborhood. Anyway,
As good as it is, that's why it's
that's correct. Anything holy requires challenges. Besides your Dane, if anyone else is watching was there in Chevron, please post. I've been there several times, and I was blessed to spend the Shabbat there. And I spent the summer in Israel, spent the Shabbat in Chevron. It's one of the most special Shabbats of my life that I'll always remember. Friday night, you go to Chevron, so you're in that big room in the actual cave, there's like a big, it's not a room, whatever. There's like a bunch of like small rooms off this, I guess called the main room. And there's like a Kabach Friday night meeting. They sing and they dance, like a 2-hour long Friday night service. And the energy is amazing. There's a special energy when you pray in there that's very, very hard to replicate. Very, very hard. It's very special to pray in there Friday night.
I have a picture of the rabbi over there.
Yeah, it's a special. We can show pictures afterwards. If I had a way to show a picture now, like, it's a very, very special. Anyway, but so the point is what the middle is saying. Oh, so when you go now, if you've seen pictures of it, it's this like huge brick, not brick, I take that back. It's a stone structure that was built by King Herod. Now, King Herod was a big builder. King Herod loved to build stuff. He was known for building stuff. He built many beautiful buildings. He built the port of Caesarea. He built the Beit HaMikdash that sadly has been destroyed. The only completely intact structure of King Herod is the building that he built over what was Ma'arat HaMachpelah. So what was the cave and the house of the building was there was a fortress or whatever was built over it. And then he built a second floor on top of that, so you would pray on top of wherever's a cave. So you have to go down, theoretically, if you would be able to go under. The building is a cave, you go up, it's a cave, and then below there is where the patriarchs are buried. Different stories that people went down there. A girl went down with a sword. I'll tell you that story. I printed it, 1 second. Yehuda Azulai was his name. Let me just go in order. And so the point is, so originally it was just like a structure on top of the cave. It was a house built on top of the cave. And then there was a complex that was built by the Arabs, which was taken over by the Crusaders in 1100. And let's turn back to mosque, but we just point out that Avram bought this in 1677 BCE, just to give historical context. For all those free Palestine from the river to the sea, not jobs. I don't want to say that on record. That's a nice word, by the way. Yeah, being nice. Who think that Jews are invading some Palestinian land? For the record, Avram brought this land in 1677 BCE. That's 4,000 years ago. And in the 1490s, basically, when the Muslims took over, they closed access to the Jewish people. The Jews couldn't go there. No surprise there, right? No apartheid or anything like that, God forbid. Only we do it, according to these people. But so they blocked access. The Jews could not go there anymore. And then eventually, in the 14th century, they stopped people from going. And then they allowed Jews to go up the 5th step. If you go outside the steps going up, the 5th step, and later changed to the 7th step. And that's where people will go. In fact, many times the Jews will pray. I don't know if you noticed it, but there's on the side. So when you go to Ma'arat HaMachpelah, you go up these stairs, you go through metal detectors, right? Then you go upstairs over here, and the building is here. In front of the building, over here, there's a little ramp. That's actually closest to where the graves would be. And when the previous Rebbe came to visit Israel in 1920, if I'm not mistaken, I forgot the year, he actually went to go stand over there. He didn't go over the steps. He stood over there. You went, yeah. So that's a special spot. That's where the previous Rebbe prayed when he was there. Many people pray over there as well, because Jews weren't allowed to even go up into the actual building; they had to stay outside of it. And then in 1929, just a brief history, especially because it's personal. Jews were always living there. There was never ever a time when Jews weren't living there. And you see the history. You go there and you look at the shuls, hundreds of years old. The shuls that are there. Chabad has owned property in Chevron since the times of the Mittler Rebbe. Menucha Rachel, who was the daughter of the Alter Rebbe, had a shoulder that had property there. The Chabad owned property. The Mittler Rebbe owned property there. There's the Mittler Rebbe shul, small little shul. We're going back 300 years ago, 250 years ago. No exact year. That Chabad owned, legally purchased land in Chevron. That was a Chabad shul in the city of Chevron. But if you know the whole story, the British and the Arabs were fighting against the Jews, and the British were pretending to try and keep control. So in 1929 was a terrible Chevron massacre when I think 60-something Jews were killed. I don't remember how many Jews were killed in Chevron in that massacre. Chana's grandfather was a young boy studying in Chevron at that time. He's actually an orphan. Tzvi Abba, who my son Tzvi Abba is named after. He was there in Chevron during the massacre. He hid inside a big pot with a small boy. He hid inside one of these big like industrial pots in the kitchen. He climbed inside, and he, thank God I didn't see him. They didn't find him, and he survived the massacre. But and then the British came and took all the Jews that were living there, including Chana's grandfather, who were living there, were studying in the yeshiva there, and they took him and they took them all away for their own safety. When we were in Chevron this past year in March of this past year, we went with our youngest son, Tzvi Abba, and we had never done this before. The previous JLI trip, let's change this, it's very personal. It's, the previous JLI trips, we went into Chevron, we went to the main where the cave is, to Machpelah, went to the home of the Shluchim there. Big Danny Cohen was an amazing guy, Chevron Cohen. But we went now, it was raining, if you remember, and there was like issues, and there was everything to be indoors. So we went to, it's called, I forgot what it's called, the name of it now, but that was the building we went to. Only a few buses went there, because they had to divide the different buses to find indoor places for everybody. Was the yeshiva that Chana's grandfather had actually studied. And that was the building. Still existing. Wow. Not only that, the Rebbe fought. It's fascinating. So we went there. The tour guy was not Chabad. He was telling us the Chabad history, though. He knew we were from. And basically, Chabad was a Chabad yeshiva. You have to say, Chana's grandfather was Chabad. He was Chabad. It was a Chabad yeshiva there. And so when the British kicked everyone out, the building was still belonged to Chabad, but it was taken over by Arab. And the Rebbe, before his Rebbe even, filed, I don't know the exact details, with the British consulate to demand, to prove ownership. The Chabad owns the building, and went back and forth every few years, every 10 years or something. They'll make sure that you have to refile it. They shouldn't run out of the statute. I don't know the exact times. And finally now, this is a year ago, they had finally gotten the rest of the building. So many years ago, they gave them part of it was a compound. They gave them one building. And now they're finally giving back the rest of the compound. They're building new apartments, and I was building 10 apartments, and the yeshiva was building 10 apartments. They had I think how many they were? Who was there at the past trip? Yeah, they were building you could buy one for $500,000 or something, right? But they were offering, something like that.
But it still would be a very dangerous place to live.
I'm sure in that building would be a lot of protection.
Yeah, but that one building, would you go out on the street?
Anyway, I'm getting a little distracted, but it's very interesting. Anyway, the point is, my friends, this is a holy place. Oh, I know I got distracted. So the point is that when you go and you see the cave, when you see the double story, like the 2 floors, and the top is added, by the way, so even if you look now, so there's a part that was built by King Herod, and then there's the roof. What King Herod built was just like a monument over it, and there was an open roof area. And then in the times of the Arabs, of the Muhammad Empire, the 1400s, they built a second layer, like a roof on top to close it in. You can see the stone. What? Caves where?
Anyway, till we got to the graves of that king, everything was cavey and scary.
Okay, cavey and scary. Got it.
So when I went, I was surprised that I didn't see any caves. I was looking for.
There's no caves. I don't want to say cavey and scary. There's no caves.
Burning houses. All over. When you come into the barn, to get that out.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Okay. Anyway, so the point is, we're getting a little too distracted. The point is, Marsha, that there is no cave. There is a cave underneath. Whatever. We'll get to it. And then there's Herod built a structure on top. First, the Arab before that built a structure. The Arab built a structure on top, and then King Herod built a massive fortress on top of that, and then there's the Muslims built on top of that. So you see today that big building is not what Avram was buying. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. So when it says, let's go back to the Rashi now. So let's go back to the Rashi. So why is it called Ma'arat HaMachpelah, a double cave? So there's two. The simple way of reading this verse, and the way that almost every single English translation of the Chumash is written, and the classic understanding is that there's 2 caves. There's 2 levels. Rashi is giving an example of a 2-story house, and this is a 2-story cave. Okay. Now the Rebbe, has a beautiful sikha on Chelik in the 5th volume of the Simchas today. It explains it as a very difficult explanation. I'm going to just the main point. I'm not going to go with all the questions in the dialogue. But basically, you don't build a cave like two caves on top of each other, because at the bottom cave will the top one collapse. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, it's not even two. It's not like two stories. Anything can be a cave inside a cave. That would be the double. So you have one cave, and inside the one cave is a second cave, like a second room in the bigger room. And that maybe was where Adam and Eve are buried, in the hidden cave inside the bigger cave. But then why would Abraham tell Ephron, I want to buy the cave that's hidden in the cave, and tell him that there's another cave inside where they might get suspicious of him? Well, I didn't know there's another cave. What's in there? So why is he calling it a double cave? So actually, what the Rebbe explains, I'll just go straight to the explanation already. Something very revolutionary, something very beautiful, which is not understood by most commentaries, that actually there was a house with 2 stories on the house, 2 floors in the house. 2 floors. Now, most people living back then lived in houses or tents? Tents. They lived in tents. If you were really, even Avram had a tent with doors on 4 sides, it was a tent. If you were really, really important and rich, you built a stone house. That was like, only very few people had a house as opposed to a tent. A 2-story house, that's already like a it was temporary. That's correct. Most people lived in tents. But here, what made this place unique is that it was a field that in it had a machpelah, which means a 2-story house. I'll tell you what is important later. We're going to get back to this. You'll see why this is important later. But that's the way the Rebbe understands it. It's a very, again, without going into all the technical back and forth and different commentaries and different explanations, but it's not a cave on top of a cave, which would be very difficult. It's not even a cave inside a cave. It's actually a cave that's on a field next to a double-story house. And by the way, if you look back at verse number 9, now you'll understand why Avram gives 2 different signs for the cave. Look at verse number 9. He says, he asked it to give me the Machpelah cave, which belongs to him, which is at the end of his field. Why is he giving 2 signs for the cave? A unique cave that is a doubled cave, you don't need another sign to describe the cave. Saying the double cave at the end of the field. How many caves were on his field that had 2 stories? Were caves inside a cave. So rather he's saying, it's the Machpelah, I want the cave. It was called the Machpelah cave because it was on the property of the 2-story house, which made it very, very unique. There was not a lot of buildings in Chevron, especially not 2-story buildings. I want the cave of Machpelah, the cave of this property, the one at the end of the field. So maybe another caves. It wasn't the cave itself didn't stand out as something unique. It was the house. And that's why Rashi says, if you look at the words of Rashi, Bayis Va'aliyah al-Gabav, a structure with an upper story over it. When Rashi says the word a structure with an upper story, Rashi's not giving you an example of a cave that has 2 floors, like, for example, a home that has 2 floors. The Rebbe explains that Rashi is saying simple. It was a property that had a structure with 2 floors. Again, there's the message to what I'm telling you right now. So I'm getting into, others are going to get so technical. But this is a brilliant that will have clarification, so stay with me. But we have a field that is a 2-story structure, and on that 2-story structure property is also at the end of that property is a cave, and that cave is where Adam and Eve are buried. So let's continue. Verse 14. Ephron replies to Avram, saying to him, First Ephron wanted to give it to him for free. Right? You want to give it to him for free. And Avram says, I don't want for free. I don't want anyone to tell me that you're the one that gave me the property and therefore I owe you a favor. And in general, when I give you a gift, you maintain some level of connection to the gift, right? So it's not fully mine. You gave me a present, so now it's like your gift you gave me. If I buy it from you, now it's mine. You have no rights to it anymore. Parenthesis, he wanted to buy it. He wanted to have complete, absolute, unequivocal ownership of the object, that nobody should ever be able to come one day and say, you don't belong, this is our, Chevron is an Arab town. By the way, By the way, the three places the Torah tells us that the forefathers paid full money to make clear and unequivocal their rights and ownership of the land of Israel, in all three places, they're the most contested and most, when I say contested, I mean, it's made up, but it's contested areas. Where are the three places in Israel that were bought and paid for by our leaders? So first is Chevron. We see over here, Avram going to pay. David HaMelech, King David buys the threshing field of Arnava, which becomes Temple Mount, and the well, no. The third is Shechem. When Yosef is buried, Yaakov buys, says it clearly in the Torah. The Torah says clearly, Yaakov buys the territory of Shechem, a land outside of Shechem where he put his tent, and that's the area that he gives to Yosef as a burial site. And today Shechem is in the hands of the Arabs, and even we kept the tomb of Joseph. They torched it, they destroyed it. Now Jews are not allowed to go there. Chevron is Ir HaAvot, the city of our forefathers. With tremendous miracle that we were able to fight. We had to fight our own government to be able to allow, like 1,000, 2,000 settlers to live in our hometown where our forefathers are buried. And by the way, we're not even allowed into the whole cave. That structure that we went into when you go in to pray, that's not the whole structure when you go upstairs. You're only in part of the structure. Part of it, the half of Yitzchak, is the Arab side, and because in I forgot the year when there was a Jew who killed Arabs in there, so because of that they separated it, they divided it, and now the Arabs can come to the Jewish side, and the Jews can go to the Arab side. So we have the side of Abraham and Yaakov, and they have the side of Yitzchak, which is fascinating that Yitzchak is the one that replaced Yishmael, who is the father of the Arab, and that's the side they have. By the way, this Shabbat, this weekend this week, is called Shabbat Chevron. Thousands and thousands of people from all over Israel go to Chevron for this Shabbos, because the Shabbos, when we read about Avram buying the property, and this Shabbat, they open up the entire cave, and even the half, which is the Arab half of the cave, of the structure, Jews are able to go pray there as well. Well, this year? You decided that, or are you saying that because you read that? Oh, okay. Hard to know if you decided it. Rachel meant something else. It's a different place. Okay, anyway. So what happens? So first he wants to give it for free. Avram says, I don't want it for free, I want to pay for it. So then comes along our buddy Ephron, who Ephron is a man that the Talmud says about him. He spoke a lot, but he did very little. He should do the opposite, little, do a lot. He spoke a lot, but he did very little. What does he do? So Ephron says to Avram, verse number 15, my Lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is it between me and you? Bury your dead. I'll give it to you for free. Oh, you want? Okay, fine. 400 silver shekel, which is a huge sum of money. Someone I was reading like a whole calculation how much a shekel of silver is worth. You get the best kind. So when you buy a property in Manhattan for, not a burial site. And Avram listened to Ephron, and Avram weighed out to Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the sons of Ches, 400 shekels of silver accepted by the merchants. Meaning, he didn't just give him 400 silver coins, he gave him the best kind of silver coins. He gave him, there's an international currency that is accepted internationally by any trader of any port will take this silver. Meaning there was silver that was used locally, so lower quality coins. Today you have quality control and all the coins are minted in a printing press or whatever, coin minting machine, and every coin comes out the same weight, the same size, the same density. Then they're all handmade. So different coins were of different value. So there were better silver coins and worse silver coins. So there were coins that were only valuable locally, and better quality coins and more expensive, bigger silver coins were used internationally for the merchants, for international commerce. He gave him 400 of the best silver coins. And so, we'll finish. And so, the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, facing Mamre, was established as Avram's possession. This included the field and the cave that was in it. and all the trees that were in the field, which was within its entire border around. So here you see again the idea that there's a field called Machpelah. I want to show you even more. If you look in Genesis chapter 49, it's one of the main proofs of the Rebbe, when Jacob passes away, and he asks his son to swear to him to bury him not in Egypt, but to take him back to Israel, to have a burial in Ma'arat HaMachpelah in Chevron, in Israel. So what does the Torah say? Chapter 49 of Genesis. Torah says, his sons carried him to the land of Canaan, and they buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah. You read that? They buried him in the cave, Bim'arat Sidei HaMachpelah. The word of the text is clear. It's in the cave of the field of Machpelah. Not that the cave is a double cave. It's a single cave. But the field is called the field of the double-story house, which in those days was a very, very prestigious, distinguishable. It was important enough that the whole field be called the double structure, the two-story structure. Again, structures were very rare in time of tents, especially a two-story structure. This was the field that Avraham brought for burial property from Ephraim the Hittite before Mamre. Okay. Anyway, here we have the story. Who, Avraham? Is who buried?
Oh, never mind, Jacob is buried
Okay.
in the cave.
So let's now go back to talking about Ma'arat HaMachpelah, this double cave from a Kabbalistic perspective. We'll see in a second. This double cave that we've been talking about till now. Let's get some Kabbalah, which is going to be beautiful and give us some insight into the 400 Jews that sadly had to return to Hashem. You'll notice, how is this cave described in Hebrew? Ma'arat HaMachpelah. From the word double. If you wanted to say a double cave, what would be the correct way of saying it? Ma'arat Kfula. How do you say double in Hebrew? Kaful. Right? Vivi agrees with me, so must be for sure. So you just say Ma'arat HaKfula, the double cave. HaMachpelah is very interesting, and it says the letter Hey come before HaMachpelah. So if you look in the Hebrew, let's say for example, if you look in verse number 9, just for example, okay? Look in verse number 9. I just want you to see the Hebrew because you're going to appreciate this more. So let's open it up on the screen. You see the words V'yitin li et ma'arat HaMachpelah. Oopsie. Ha, Hey. Machpelah. So the Hey, which is doubled. Ha, the Hey, which is Machpelah, which is a doubled Hey. And that's how Machpelah is described. Where do we have a double Hey? Where in Judaism do we have a double Hey? I'm going to quote to you now from the Zohar on this week's Parsha, page 129. The Zohar says as follows. Where is there a double Hey in Judaism? Anyone know? In the name of God. How do we spell the name of God? Yud Hey Vav Hey. That's how we spell God's name. Yud Hey and then Vav Hey. And we're told in Kabbalah, a well-known idea in Kabbalah, in Kabbalistic terminology, there's the Hey Ila'ah and the Hey Tata, which means the supernal Hey, the higher Hey, the Hey of the Yud Hey, and there's a lower Hey of God's name. Right? Two Heys in God's name. They have different meanings, and it's not for right now. But where else do we see the idea of the Hey being elevated? The word Teshuvah. In Kabbalah and Chassidus have a great length. What is Teshuvah?
To return.
Teshuvah is repentance, return. But in Chassidus it explains what's Teshuvah? Tashuv Hey. The word Teshuvah, Taf, Shin, Vet, Beis, Hey. Should put onto the paper actually. Teshuvah. How do you spell the word Teshuvah? Tashuv Hey. What does Tashuv Hey mean? What is Tashuv? Return the Hey. Teshuvah is Tashuv Hey, to return the Hey, right? Yes, you with me?
Yes.
Good. So, when we do Teshuvah, what are we doing? we are returning the hay back to its source. Now, I don't want to give a whole class on Teshuvah, although I could. Obviously, it would be very interesting, but we're not going to have the time for that. But in short, in essence, the soul of a Jew has become disassociated from God, and we need to return it back to its source. Source of the Jewish neshamas from the hay, but let's not go there now. So Teshuvah is to return the hay. Which hay? The higher hay? The higher hay or the lower hay? Vivi, you're disturbing me, Vivi.
Yeah, sorry.
You should. There's a higher hay and there's a lower hay. Which hay? Which hay is being returned? When you do Teshuvah, what hay is being returned?
Oh, the true one.
Which hay? The higher hay of God's name or the lower hay of God's name?
The lower.
So it depends what kind of Teshuvah you're doing.
Oh.
Kabbalah says there's Tshuva Ilah and there's Tshuva Tata. There's a concept of lower Teshuvah and there's a concept of higher Teshuvah. Now I'm going to oversimplify this, but to make it understandable and make it, so I'm going to oversimplify deep ideas now. In simple, on one level of truth, Teshuvah Tata, the lower level of Teshuvah, is a head that has been disconnected from its source. A person sinned. A person did an act of transgression against God. And now they regret what they've done wrong. They have remorse. They have a feeling of sadness or whatever, that they've disassociated from God. They were separated from God. So they return from the distance, from where they were, and they return back. They return back to God. They return back to the completion of the name of God, Yod Hey Vav Hey. So the Hey that was away is returned. That's the lower level of Teshuvah, where I've sinned, I've been disengaged, and now I'm reconnecting. But there's a higher level of Teshuvah. The higher level of Teshuvah is where I didn't sin. But yet, I still feel the need to come closer to God. You don't have to sin to feel the need to become close to God. In fact, what is a tzaddik always yearning to do? A tzaddik is always yearning to connect and come closer to God. But they're not yearning because they're distant. They're yearning because they're close. And when you're close to someone you really love, you say, well, I'm already in love, so I don't need to do anything because I'm in love. No, if you're really in love, then you want to be even more in love, and you want to be even more connected, spend more time in intimacy and bonding. So the higher level of Teshuvah is the higher level of God's name, the higher Hey, the Yud Hey, which is the return of a tzaddik. So you have the Teshuvah of the Baal Teshuvah, the Teshuvah of the person who has sinned, who is disengaged, has been far. He's returning to Tashuv Hey. He's returning the lower Hey of God back to God's name. And you have the Teshuvah of a tzaddik, the Teshuvah of someone holy and righteous, who is never far from God, but who is close, but he wants to be even closer and closer. Okay? So these are the two levels of return. Now, generally speaking, there's a very famous question in Chassidus. Why, I appreciate all the comments on Facebook, why did God take a pure neshama, a holy soul, a lofty, spiritual, pristine, pure being, and bring it down to the world? You take a neshama, you take a soul that's holy. It's under the Kisei HaKavod, under the throne of God's glory. And what do you do with it there? Well, if you're just going to lift it back up to where it came from, so then what did you gain by going down in the first place? You're right. That's true. That's 100% true. That we have a mission to make a home for God in this world. That's true. But why does the soul need to do it? What's the soul's soul did anything wrong? For the soul to come to this world and be far from God is painful. So I'm going to go straight to the point because of time. There's something called Yerida L'Tzorach Aliyah, which means a descent for the sake of an ascent. So, for example, if I wanted to jump over this table right over here, could I jump over this table? Well, maybe I could, but not from where I'm standing right now. Where I'm standing right now, I couldn't jump over this table. However, if I would go back to that wall, I probably could jump over this table. I'm getting old and creaky a little bit. I don't know if I would try it, but David's moving out of the way. David's smart. I'm not going to try it, especially not on camera. Because I'm one of those bloopers, like I flat on my face, like.
You should stick to jumping on top of cars.
Yeah, Simchas Torah. If I was Simchas Torah, I would probably try jumping over the table. But it's not Simchas Torah, so I didn't have any l'chaim, so I'm not going to do any jumping over tables tonight. So you're safe, David. You are safe, and the lady's sitting over there early, and you're safe. Come on. But David, I asked you a question. I said I'm going to jump over this table. Table's on this side of me, right? So why am I walking there? If I want to jump over the table, it's over here. You understand? If I want to jump over this table here, I should be going this way. I shouldn't be walking that way. And yet the only way I'm going to make it over this table is if I first give myself some distance. That, in short, is an excellent example to explain this Kabbalistic idea that explains why our soul comes down to this world. The tzorach aliyah. The descent is actually part of the ascent. I'm going that way so I can go even further this way than I could if I would just start where I am right now. So when the soul comes down to this world, yes, it has to make a home for God and all that. But from the perspective of the soul itself, the soul is already pure and holy. It's a tzaddik in heaven. But guess what? It can't do teshuvah in heaven. It can't reach higher than where it is. By the soul coming down to this world is a yerida. It's a tremendous descent for the soul, but it's a descent for the sake of an even greater ascent that will happen after the soul completes its mission in this world and now goes higher than where it was before it started. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, that's teshuvah. Yerida, the Torah Aliyah. Now, when does this final return happen? When do you reach the final level of teshuvah where you elevate not just the lower hay but the higher hay? When the soul leaves the body. When the soul leaves the body, and this is very much connected to the very opening verse of this week's Torah reading. What happened? The Torah told us that Sarah died. Again, I'm going a little quick over here. Sarah died, which is a separation of body and soul. In fact, where did she die? In Kiryat Arba. There's two ways of the Zohar of the Sarah's the body or the soul. I don't want to get to it now, but she died in Kiryat Arba. Arba is the four elements that comprise a body: fire, water, air, and earth. Our body is made up of earth, of water, of fire, and air. Those were all together in Chevron. What is Chevron, the Hebrew word? Chibur, connected. When the body was alive, the water, air, fire, and earth that comprised our body was all integrated as one. It was one connected body. And now the soul, the minister, it dies, and the body is nothing. And the soul comes to mourn on the body, etc. And then it would say, and Avraham rose from on the body. Avraham rose, the soul rises up and goes to a higher level than where it was before December. That's the opening verse, text number 2. Vayokam Avraham me'al pnei Mosai. Avraham got up from on his dead body, and the soul goes up to an even higher level. This, my friend, is the story of the soul coming down to this world, and then the story of the soul going up. Remember I told you to pay attention to the fact that the Rebbe explained that this house, this field is called the field of Machpelah because of the 2-story house? Mm-hmm. The Rebbe says something so beautiful. Based on the double house is a representation of our world. Our world is a 2-story house. Our existence is a double-decker house, if you will. It's a double-decker house. It's a bayis va'aliyah al gabo. Those are the words of Rashi. It's a house, it's a structure, it's a universe that we live in, a physical world, and an elevation on top of it. These 2 levels are hinted to or represented in the hay machpelah, the hay which is doubled. The lower hay of God's name is on the first floor, and the higher hay of God, the higher hay of God on the second floor. The soul has to go down into the world. The soul is forced to have a yerida. The soul is forced to have a descent into this bias, into this physical world we live in here. The soul was quite happy up there. And the soul is forced to come down here. And here, when it's down in this structure, it has a chance to do teshuvah, has a chance to return the hay and make the name of God complete. To make the name of God complete. And when it finishes its mission, that's when God takes it back upstairs, back to the top, to complete the higher hay of God's name. Understand? What's the story of the Kedoshim? When people are taken before their time, generally it's a sign that they completed their mission on this world. A person dies at old age, Baruch Hashem, they lived at old age, but it's hard to know if they just died of old age or they finished their mission. When a person dies young, it means they're done in this world. They earned their source. And that's why they're done. They finished their mission. They finished their mission. So in fact, I don't know if anyone paid attention. Shabbat, we read the martyrs on page 230 of Musaf. How God remembers with mercy the pious, the upright, and the perfect ones. The holy communities who gave their lives to the sanctification of the divine name. They were beloved and pleasant in their lives. And even in their death, they did not part from him. They were swifter than eagles, stronger than lions, to carry out the will of their maker and the desire of their creator. Therefore, we ask, may our God remember them with favor, together with the other righteous of the world, and avenge the spilled blood of his servant, as written in the Torah of Moses, the man of God. O nation, verse 1, that no Yosef was asking, will sing the praises of his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants, bring retribution upon his foes, and place it in his land, his people, by servants, etc. And we say, let it be known among the nations, before our eyes, retribution of the spilled blood of your servants. And it is said, for the avenger of bloodshed is mindful of them. He does not forget the cry of the downtrodden, etc., etc. The point is, this paragraph describes him as Kedoshim. When a soul is taken from this world because of it completed its mission, and now it dies as a Jew. It died because it was a Jew. That is the ultimate completion of the greatest mission that a Jew's soul has. At that moment, we are sure, we are confident that they've returned the hay, the higher hay, to go to the upstairs, not just in the bayis, not just the hay of separation that comes when you do a sin and you're returning, but the higher hay, the hay of the closeness, the higher hay of God's name, the double hay to make the name of God complete. I was add that we know Mashiach will come. What's going to happen? When Amalek is in power, it says that there's a blockage on the name of God. Just case, there's a limit on the name of God, just says Yud-K. And on the day Mashiach comes, what does it say about Yom Ahu? Yiyeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. We say it every morning in our prayers. On that day, God will be one, and His name will be one. His name is not one. That's how Amalek is. They made a block on the Yud-K. Our job, we still are in this world to return the lower hay. Those Kedoshim return the higher hay, and that will bring the coming of Mashiach, God willing, very, very speedily. I hope all the ideas I shared made sense. Beautiful, beautiful Kabbalah. Hello to everybody.